Well, it is 101, so I wanted to thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our Savannah Jewish Family Services Food for Thought program. Please note, if you have any questions during the program, please write them in the chat. We'll have Q&As at the end. I am honored to introduce today's special pre-Memorial Day speaker, Rabbi Tracy Kapelowitz, the Director of Operations of JWB, Jewish Chaplains Council. So Rabbi Kapelowitz has had close to 15 years of experience as a spiritual leader and educator, and is a chaplain in the U.S. Armed Forces. Thank you for joining us all the way from New York.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm excited to speak with you, especially in advance of Memorial Day, to talk to you a bit about Jews who serve in the military and chaplaincy, and maybe inspire you a little bit about what can be achieved when we support our Jews in the military. So let me just start. Is anyone here a veteran? When did you serve, sir? You're on mute.
Here we go. I'm muted. 63 to 68, Air Force.
Air Force. Very nice.
Then another 15 years in the reserves. So altogether 63 to 83. I retired.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you for yours.
So I wanted to start by just telling you a little bit about JWB. And so let me see if I can. I have two computers. I'm going to share my screen. And let me start by just filling you in on what is JWB and how do we function. So JWB, Jewish Chaplains Council, was founded in 1917 on the third day of America's involvement in World War I. And it was founded when it was clear that there was going to be a draft and that Jews were going to be serving in large numbers and that they needed support from the Jewish community in order to observe Jewish holidays, in order to receive the support that they needed throughout. And so JWB was founded. It was founded as the Jewish Welfare Board, and it was founded by a number of organizations that were at the time the equivalent of today's JCCs, but a little bit more pared down. And they came forward and they established this group in order to reach across denominations and to make sure that Jews' needs were served in the military. In World War II, certainly that expanded, and we have a lot of very accomplished chaplains who were a part of the liberation of the camps, and were a part of things like printing Talmuds, working with the American government to print Talmuds for the DP camps. The Jewish Welfare Board was also a part of the founding of the USO. We're one of the three original founders of the USO, which still functions today. And so what ended up happening is that after World War II, our GIs came home and they said to the Jewish Welfare Board, the organization they knew best as the convener of the Jewish community, can we help them to establish country clubs and YMCAs and all of these organizations that they were so familiar with during the time of their service? And so we did, and we supported the founding of the JCCs. And we are even today the member of the JCC Association of North America. We are a signature program of the JCC Association. And we take great pride in that relationship. And over time, the child became the parent, and we are now a part of the JCC Association after having founded it. And today we work as the JWB Jewish Chaplains Council. And what that Chaplains Council is a plenum of leadership from the Reform, Conservative, Orthodox world. And they come together and they make religious decisions for our military chaplains, who we then endorse, and we continually recruit Jewish chaplains and Jewish lay leaders in order to serve the Jewish community. So when you think about the Jewish community of the military, you should be thinking about 10,000 active duty Jews who have 15,000 family members who they travel with. And then another way to look at it is we also have active duty service members who are partnered with Jews and are raising Jewish children. And when you take those numbers in total, we're talking about a community of about 42,000 active duty service members and children and spouses who they are serving our country. And so what do we do today? These days, beyond this, we continue to support the chaplaincy throughout the military. We endorse chaplains, and you'll see some of our chaplains here. The one I just put up most recently is working with the SEAL team. She is one of our 2 rabbis serving in the Navy and working with the SEALs. So it really tells you the quality of the chaplains who we are putting forward. We have chaplains serving in the Air Force, in the Army, and in the Navy, and the Navy also serves the Marines as well as serving in the Coast Guard. They're an illustrious group of accomplished leaders, and these are the active duty side, and we also have reserve chaplains serving both on National Guard and in the regular reserve. And in addition to them, we have our force multipliers, who are our Jewish lay leaders. And our Jewish lay leaders are located throughout the globe, and they are supporting making sure that Jewish communities are functioning on installations as far as Japan and Alaska. We even named a lay leader this morning to North Pole, Alaska at Eielson Air Force Base. So we are very active, and we train them, providing them with regular training. We have a training coming up this August in Miami Beach, and we give them tremendous support to serve in those roles. And some of what they do are leading Jewish communities. This is on the right side, is the Pentagon Chapel. And if you're familiar with the Pentagon Chapel, it's located in the place where the plane impacted, the terrorist plane on September 11th impacted right there. And so they built a chapel so it can be a place of remembrance and a place of peace. And we have Jewish chaplains who are assigned from there to there, civilian chaplains who are assigned to there. And on the left side, you see our Siddur, which is a most amazing thing. This is a Siddur that is printed with leadership from the conservative reform and Orthodox communities. They have co-published this Siddur as the JWB Siddur. And if you think about some of the difficulties we have as denominations of working together, it's almost impossible to think that you could have a Siddur that represents all denominations. And the JWB Siddur has been published since its founding, and we will have another printing going forward around the end of this year. So it still remains active, and the intention is this is a small size Siddur to fit in the cargo pocket of a service member. We also endorse chaplains for the Veterans Affairs. And so our VA chaplains serve throughout the United States in veteran hospitals, and they really make sure that some of the difficulties that our veterans are facing, and they are significant, that they work towards ameliorating them and to raising awareness around some of those issues. So when you think about the work that we do connect with our JCCs, and we see it as our mission to really support our Jewish families in the military to connect back to their JCCs and to connect to their local Jewish communities. So that's something that we can always look towards the future and to figure out ways to connect your community more deeply to some of the military communities in your area. So when I started this position, I had been a chaplain in the Air Force as a reservist. And when I started this position, I recognized I was responsible for JWB Jewish Chaplains Council's Facebook page. And I knew at that time that I was going to be responsible for putting up the post for September 11th. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my experience around that. And so when I decided that what I was going to focus on my post. I was going to focus on chaplains who had served in support of the aftermath of September 11th. And I met with a chaplain. There had 3 Jewish chaplains on site at the Pentagon following September 11th, and just the hours following. And when it was a search mission, and then when it was a recovery mission. And I spoke with one of the chaplains, and he told me, a lot of his story from having been there. And then I had a meeting with him coming up. This was over the phone, and I had a meeting with him following that. And he came into my office, and he started telling me more. And at the time, I was thinking that, this was still before September 11th. I might, publish some of this information. We might, write it down. So I was taking notes. And I realized about 10 minutes into the conversation that he and I both were fully aware. What he was telling me was not going to become the basis of an article or anything like that. What became aware is that he had a story he wanted me to know. He wanted to relieve himself of some of what he had experienced by sharing it with someone else. And he wanted me to understand that service to our country comes at a cost. And for him, it comes at an emotional cost. In certain behaviors that even now, as a retired veteran, he still experiences in some strange behaviors, like when he comes into a synagogue, he sits facing the door so he can see who's coming in and out. Behaviors like getting a little angry too quickly, having a hard time calming down, and also that recognition that he's missed so much of his children's lives during his deployments that he likely can't really make up for that lost time. And as he spoke, I realized that, I too have a story to tell. I wasn't there at September 11th, but that I have a story that I want to share with you as well. So if you'll allow me, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my story of service. And it starts here, my bat mitzvah. My bat mitzvah took place in New Jersey with Rabbi Howard Morrison was my rabbi. He was new to our synagogue. He was only in his 2nd year. And we had an older congregation. And so there are very few bar bat mitzvah children. And I was his only student and his first bat mitzvah that he ever performed. I was a day school kid. So I didn't need very much training, and it was not an egalitarian synagogue. So there was very limited things that I could even do during the service. But together we studied, and we studied over a long period of time, over about a year. And afterwards, I had 5 speeches that I delivered at the evening of my bat mitzvah, and I really enjoyed the experience. And I realize now that I'm a rabbi because of him and because of the special experience with him. Now, he was also a reserve chaplain in the Air Force. And so I followed him. I followed him into the Air Force, and I definitely owe him tremendous gratitude for the service I got to have. And so I joined the Air Force in 1999, and I came at it with a lot of deep knowledge. This was my first summer in rabbinical school, and in my life, there had been a war in American history. So it was the Gulf War in 1991. So clearly I knew a lot about wars. I know that wars last a maximum of 100 hours. I knew that wars have very clear victors, and I knew that they don't have very many casualties. So I felt very safe going into the military, because joining the military to me at that point meant, it's a way to serve your country, and maybe not even so different than camp. Camp with uniforms is what it seemed like. But that was 1999. And then in September 11th, 2001, everything changed. And no one today would describe a war using those terms. No one would describe war as short-lived. Afghanistan is now the longest war we've ever been in. And hopefully are getting out of. And no one would describe war as something that has minimal casualties. Each casualty is certainly a tremendous cost. And we've had significant numbers of casualties. And so I stayed in, of course, and I was happy to serve my country. And I started my training in Montgomery, Alabama, and that the following summer, I went to the Air Force Academy, which is just a tremendously beautiful place. And I got to serve there in the chapel. And I bring you pictures from the chapel because it's just fantastic. So the chapel here, if you look at it, it looks like the tail of a plane. That's how it's designed. And it's so majestic. The upstairs of the chapel is the Protestant sanctuary. And it's large, and it just feels like, like you're in something the size of a hangar, but it really does feel very majestic. And then underneath is the Catholic chapel, which harkens back to early Catholicism, when they were hiding out in caves to practice Catholicism before it had become an accepted religion. And so this is sort of this really a dark and a warm feeling in that space. And then behind that is a circular chapel, which is the Jewish chapel. And on each of their panels, they're not walls because it's a circle. So there are these circular panels where this artist, and I don't recall his name right now, this artist painted images of where the Bible speaks of flight. And so these are just really majestic images, and they're all in gold leaf. And it's a small space, certainly as a chapel relative to the Protestant and relative to the Catholic, but it feels like you're home. It feels like you're being embraced, and tremendously respectful space. It has its own entrance. You don't have to walk through the Protestant or the Catholic chapels in order to walk into it. And it's right now under construction. It's going to have some reconstruction. The entire chapel has. And I was thinking to myself that I just saw the baccalaureate, the Jewish baccalaureate before graduation, which just happened yesterday. And I thought to myself, wow, what a shame that they don't get to have their baccalaureate in this space, because it's just so fantastic. And so when I served at the academy, I used to come during basic cadet training, which is in the summer. It's like freshman orientation for college. And I would be there to help them out throughout the process. And on their first day of real like registration, one of the things they do is they determine what religion they wish to place on their dog tags. And that becomes sort of a permanent decision unless they wish to change that going forward. And I thought to myself, what would you answer if someone asks you what your religion is? And how much that answer might change depending on who the person is who's asking the question. So if you have a 6-foot-tall Southern Baptist chaplain asking you what religion you are, you might answer that differently than if you are asked, "Hi, I'm Rabbi Tracy Kaplowitz. What religion are you?" And go through the process of identifying your religion. So I made sure that that was the station I always took during this orientation process, so that we could have as many Jews as possible feel comfortable answering that question. I am Jewish, and I want that represented on my dog tags. But if you recall, in 2005, there was a study done and a commission held by Congress to check into anti-Semitism that was taking place at the Air Force Academy. And it was very real. It was very real. Colorado Springs is located in a place which has many evangelical programs focused on the family, navigators, and the like. They are based in Colorado Springs, and it leads to a culture of evangelism. And so in this investigation, luckily, brought to the fore that this is truly happening, that Jewish and other minority faith religions don't feel comfortable at the academy, and it was addressed by Congress. So that was part of that experience. And by the way, it was a JWB Jewish chaplain, Rabbi Arnie Resnikoff, who led the investigation on behalf of Congress into the evangelism. And just know Rabbi Arnie Resnikoff's story. He is the rabbi who was presented most often to the Congress, given the blessings on Congress most often of any rabbi. He had served in Vietnam and and then became a chaplain following his service in Vietnam. And he went back in as a Jewish chaplain and was at Beirut when the bombing in Beirut happened. And his message from that bombing was read aloud by President Reagan to Congress. So he's a very influential rabbi, and we are honored to have had him as a JWB chaplain. Following my service at the Air Force Academy, I went to serve at Dover Air Force Base. At that point in my life, what I realized is that I was working full time and I could no longer take 35 days at once in the summer, and it was better for me to break it up throughout the year. And so I went over to Dover Air Force Base, which is about, I think, a 4-hour drive from my house. And I would be able to go, sporadically, go for a weekend, go here or there on a day. And I was attached to the Dover Air Force Base mortuary. This was in 2007, which was at the height of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So in both in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And so I want to describe for you my first experience there. I was completely unprepared to serve at the mortuary. I don't know if people are usually prepared for something like this, but I was so unprepared that the chaplain who was running the mortuary at the time, a civilian, said to me, "Don't come in this weekend. We have a large number of casualties that we're going to be working with, and we call them fallen heroes, a large number of fallen heroes, and we don't want you coming in because we can't support you through the process of taking you through the mortuary. And anyway, you're transitioning to a new installation, so there's enough paperwork. If you know from the military, there's always paperwork to be done. There's ample paperwork. Just do your paperwork. Come in for the weekend, do your paperwork, meet some of the people on base. Just don't go to the mortuary." And you know what? I was relieved. I was absolutely relieved to get that message, because while I knew I was taking on this mission, I didn't understand much about it, and I wasn't so ready for it. I had never seen a dead body before. So I busied myself all weekend. I did what he said. I met people on base. I filled out forms. And on Sunday afternoon, I was getting ready for the drive home when in walked a chaplain from the mortuary with a request. I heard him down the hall. He says, "Does anyone here read Hebrew?" And he was led back to me. And I said, "Yeah, of course I read Hebrew. I'm a rabbi." And he got me in his car and we drove straight to the mortuary. It turns out that there were 5 soldiers killed when an IED blew up their Humvee. 3 of them were as yet unidentified. I was led into the autopsy room where I was asked to read a tattoo. It was the Hebrew name Daniel. And I asked, "Are you missing a Daniel?" They were. Then I asked, "Is he Jewish?" As I asked the question, the phone rang. Daniel's family is observant. They're members of a Chabad synagogue, and they wanted burial according to Jewish tradition. This transformed everything. It meant I was in charge to take over the operations from this point on. And this is during the autopsy. Autopsies use a lot of water to wash away blood, and Judaism demands that blood be buried with the body. Despite having never seen an autopsy before, I changed the procedure. No more water, and all of the blood was to be collected in paper towels and buried with him. I then went to the personal effects room. I collected all of his clothing with blood, cleaned dog tags and ID cards of blood. These clothes and the now stained towels would be buried with him as well. Fallen heroes are most often embalmed and prepared for burial in dress uniform. I next spoke to the funeral director to make sure that nothing extraneous was placed inside that casket. And I informed her that a formal uniform, ribbons, and medals would have to be sent separately. When everything was addressed and in order for my first fallen hero, for Daniel, I sat alongside him and I read from the book of Psalms, praying that his soul make its way to heaven. The following day, another chaplain would be on base, Jewish chaplain, and I would be back at my desk on Long Island, back at work as a civilian. With this introduction to the mortuary, there was nothing the chaplains needed to do to shelter me. So from 2007 to 2010, each time a Jewish fallen hero or civilian was killed in Iraq or Afghanistan and was scheduled to arrive at Dover, I received a phone call asking me to arrive on base in time for the dignified transfer. The dignified transfer is a beautiful and solemn ritual. I'll show you a video of it so you have a sense of the process. What you won't hear in the video are the words of the chaplain. These are the only words spoken during the ritual. The chaplain, along with the general officer and the base commander, solemnly march into the plane that has been prepared with flag-draped transfer cases of fallen heroes. The chaplain calls the team to prayer and recites a prayer that was written for the occasion. My prayers, including honoring and remembering the service of these fallen heroes, a prayer for their families, thanksgiving for the pilots and crew who returned them home to us, and I always concluded with a prayer for peace. So make sure that you're going to hear it. So 1 second.
Also internationally today, it's one of the most sacred and secret places in America, the mortuary at Dover Air Force Base. It's where the men and women who give their lives for this country abroad return before they're taken home or to Arlington and laid to rest. It happened again last night as Vice President Pence paid respects to 2 of the 7 service members killed in a helicopter crash in Iraq. Best-selling author Brad Meltzer spent months in that secret Dover mortuary where cameras are not allowed, and he was granted rare access as he conducted research for his new novel, The Escape Artist, which debuted last week at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Meltzer sat down with us to explain this most private and sacred of moments.
It takes a very particular person to work at Dover. The thing that they explained to me is families don't even realize, and they don't believe it until they see their son or daughter. So you have morticians who will spend 14 hours rewiring someone's jaw and then smoothing it over with clay because they want to let a family see their son or daughter one last time. There's a room in Dover where all the uniforms are. You walk in and all you see are all the medals. Here's the Purple Heart, here's the Medal of Valor, and here's all of them. And I'm talking hundreds of them for every single branch of the military. You just feel, my gosh, there, but for the grace of God, go so many people that do this amazing job, but the consequences of it are immeasurable. One of the most amazing places I saw also was the personal effects room, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's all the things that are really left behind, and the one that just absolutely undid me are half-finished letters. You'll get letters that say, you know what, I just love you and I miss you, kiss the kids for me. I find words for a living. I have no words for that. The loss of someone who's given their life and made the ultimate sacrifice for our country is a complex issue. It is a hard job. It is not an easy issue, and God bless the people who do it every day.
So you get a sense of what the of what that looks like. So in 2009, President Obama reopened Dover Air Force Base to the media and to the families of the fallen. Now, when I received the call to come to Dover for a dignified transfer, my duty did not begin on the flight line. Rather, it started with a meeting with the families in the base chapel office. One night, I met with 2 families, the parents and brother of a young officer, an Air Force Academy graduate, and the mother and best friend of a civilian from Brooklyn working on a military contract in Afghanistan. It turns out that this young woman and middle-aged man had bonded in Kandahar over being Jewish. Finding similarities so far from home was a comfort to each of them. They spent their days together and traveled outside of the base together, where they came under attack and were killed. Meeting with the families, putting stories to the names and bodies I would be caring for, made this work that much more meaningful and painful. One Memorial Day, I was driving back to Long Island from Dover and listening to NPR on my car radio. The station ran a story of a journalist. She had been embedded with the army in Iraq 1 year prior. She told story after story of this playful group of soldiers she had met. She enjoyed both spending time with them and traveling outside the wire with them and experiencing Iraq from their perspective. She went on to describe how that morning in June, wanting to submit a story, she didn't go with these men to the armored personnel carrier, but stayed back at the base. Hours later, waiting for their return, she learned that their transport hit an IED and 5 of them had died. I knew from her story that she was one of the last people to see Daniel, my first fallen hero, the one whose tattoo I had identified, to see him alive. The transition that I made regularly from the mortuary to civilian life was never easy. My drive home was often my time to cry or be alone in silence. I often couldn't remember the drive home. I struggled to understand how I made it safely home. I was so engrossed in my thoughts. It would take me days with the support of close family and friends to fully re-enter my daily life. Until today, certain smells bring me right back to the mortuary. While I believe that the time I served in the mortuary was likely the most difficult work I will ever do, I feel blessed by the experience and proud to have honored our fallen heroes in this way. I want to see if I can share my screen again. Need to figure out how to do that. There you go. So it's 10 years later, and I've returned. Was working in a school for many years, but I've returned now back to the military and to the service that I love doing, caring for our Jews who serve. And so I wanted to show you a little bit about some of what we're doing and some of what you can do to care for our Jews in the military today. So I want to start with this. Tell stories of Jewish service. Anti-Semitism, as we all know, is on the rise. And today is this day that we're going to be dedicating this afternoon to a national call for speaking out against anti-Semitism. So I want to ask that you don't ever repeat the statement saying that the military is not a good place for a nice Jewish boy or girl, or that Jews don't serve our country. This is an anti-Semitic trope, and we have to do our part in the Jewish community to stop saying it. Allow your children and grandchildren to dream of serving our country. And of course, it goes without saying the benefits are almost too good to pass up. Free college education, pension, healthcare, and more. So please do your part of telling stories of Jewish service. Another thing that you can do is support our efforts. I was brought into this position of Director of Operations because I am an educator. And it's time that our military families receive the very best that Jewish education offers, that Jewish camping and other Jewish experiences offer. We should honor the commitment of our service members every opportunity we have. Therefore, we're actively bringing Jewish life to military members. Starting this fall, due to JWB's advocacy, the U.S. Army will fund Hebrew school for kindergarten through high school, as well as adult Jewish education. But there's so much more we need to do. And it goes without saying, each initiative that we wish to do comes with a price tag. It will be expensive to provide our men and women in uniform with the Jewish community that they deserve. But we imagine things like this. We imagine Jewish camping for free for military families, whether day camp or overnight camp. We imagine JCC membership. We imagine congregational membership. We imagine that our Jewish service members deserve full access to the Jewish community that we take advantage of every day. So I hope that you'll join me there. And then I also hope this Sunday that you will join me for the National Jewish Community Observance of Memorial Day. It is taking place online at 7 p.m. this Sunday, and it is a beautiful tribute from the Jewish community honoring those who have lost their lives in service to our country. In particular, we focus on the Gold Star families since September 11th. And your own community is represented there. Savannah is represented through Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis. His wife speaks about him and the loss she experienced. Okay, so hopefully you'll see us there. We'll get to see you there on Sunday night. And in addition, I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to put in the chat the link for that. I also want to share this with you. This Shabbat, preceding Memorial Day, we have the opportunity to pray for our Jews who are currently serving and all armed service members. And so I want to share this. It was written specifically for JWB and composed as well. And this is our song of service. So enjoy it, and then afterwards I'll take questions.
ריבונו של עולם, ריבונו של עולם, אנו קוראים לברכתך, ולך יעלי צבא ארצות הברית, הנשים והגברים, אמיצים שגבורתם ומסירותם למדינתנו מגינה לכולנו. ריבונו של עולם, ריבונו של עולם, יותר מכולנו נשים תפילה שיזכו לשוב בשלום במהרה ובבריאות טובה למשפחותיהם ולארצם, whether by air, land or sea, wherever their orders take them, we ask, dear God, that they be protected within your sheltering presence. Ribono shel olam, Ribono shel olam, Ribono shel
Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that. Okay, at this point, I'm willing to take any questions if you have.
Hello, I'm Carol Greenberg. I have a question. First of all, thank you for your service, and your discussion was really riveting. We don't have a JWB chapter here, we are a military town, and we have Jewish war veterans here actually celebrating 125th anniversary this year. And we're slowly trying to build up because many of our members are older. I volunteer as a civilian to work with them. But over the years pre-COVID, we were trying to engage Jewish soldiers on base. We have Hunter Army Air Force Base and we have Fort Stewart within close proximity. And an issue that we took up a few years ago when we had a Jewish chaplain was, at his suggestion, was the idea of suicide among the high rate of suicide among soldiers, Jewish soldiers in the military. And so we tried to come up with ways to provide support, even though we're a small community and we can't come every week with milk and cookies, you know, the way the larger Protestant groups can. So we came up with a couple of targeted things that we could do throughout the year, including, you know, open membership to the JEA or JCC. We put together Purim boxes for 50 members that were being deployed. What we found out was that without having a Jewish chaplain, having a chaplain often was not enough. We don't often have a Jewish chaplain. And number two, that many of the Jewish soldiers were not self-identifying as Jewish, not only because of their fear of what would happen to them in unfriendly territory when they were sent abroad, but because it sometimes identified them as different. And part of the military experience is being part of a team. So if everyone in the barracks is going out on Friday night, they don't necessarily want to be invited to somebody's Shabbat home. They want to fit in. How do you approach that, since you work through JCCs and you can see the difference between what is an imposition and also may be dangerous for them by the identification of being Jewish, and what really would be helpful?
I think you're pointing to a lot of good points. Fort Stewart has a chaplain who's leaving right now, so but there is a lay leader who's going to be serving there. I don't believe it's through JWB. I believe it's an Aleph, a lay leader, but we work very closely with Aleph. Aleph is associated with Chabad, so we certify the lay leaders, and they certify lay leaders as well. And your lay leader will be a good contact. So the lay leader, you've actually spoken to a number of different issues that are all interlaced here. So one thing is that when if you approach the chapel office, their way to support any services you want to bring to the installation would be to send messages directly to those who have registered themselves as Jews on installation. And if they have not identified themselves as Jewish, there's no way to get messaging to them. So that's one part of the problem. So we don't even know who it is we're not reaching because we don't really have that ability to reach them. Some of our installations have had much more success with using social media. So there are sites like the Fort Benning Jewish community, the Fort Bliss Jewish community. Some of those tools might be much more useful, and that's a great thing to work on with the lay leader who's at Fort Stewart. So if you reach out to the chapel office in Fort Stewart, they should be able to connect you with that lay leader. To establish something like a Facebook page is a great way to enable people to find you and to reach out to you, or to at least observe what's going on without having to identify themselves publicly through military channels. And then it's the question of what is like the range of programming. So we know from all of the data that's been collected about Jews in America, we are not such a religious group. And so when things happen always through the chapel, they already are a barrier. You know, am I going to be judged because I'm in an intermarriage or because I'm interdating? Am I going to be judged because I can't speak Hebrew? Am I going to be judged because I don't know the prayers and I'm not comfortable with it? So all of that becomes a barrier, but that doesn't even enable someone to necessarily even walk through the door. And with the chapel really identifies that the way to do Jewish is through a service. Whereas if you ask most people, the way to do Jewish is to light Hanukkah candles, or to give gifts on Hanukkah, or to eat matzah on Passover. Like it's, the definitions are a little bit different than purely religion. So I think working together with your JCC, I think is another great opportunity, because if the JCC is offering singles programming, young people's programming, families with young children programming, then there are opportunities to start bridging what they're offering together with the installation. Yeah, I think that those are some opportunities, and those are things that I work on. So I work with PJ Library. We have through a special grant from PJ Library, we have 5 parent ambassadors on installations throughout the U.S. who are developing family connections outside of the chapel. And they're doing it very successfully. And it's very reassuring for people to know that there's someone else who's Jewish who's acknowledging them and not pushing them around religion.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but just you triggered a memory that I have of something that we did try. We didn't try the social media, and maybe that's something that Sunny and Adam Solander can work on. But my guess is that we would have to get permission, of course, through the military in order to connect with their soldiers. And it's not always easy to get any kind of listing or any kind of information, even if you have a chaplain working with you. But we did actually try to invite some of the young people to an event that our Young Jewish Singles, that's our under 40s group, was having. The problem is that I think the only one time that somebody showed up is they can't necessarily get transportation off the base. And when they do, they really don't fit in. A 19, 20-year-old who's military is not the same thing as even a 25 to 30-year-old who is non-military. The experiences are so different that the maturation level is different for what somebody has experienced versus what their social skills might be. And it just didn't work. And we don't have a large enough population in order to bridge that comfort level with a lot of people from different backgrounds. So I don't know if somebody else has a question, you can speak to this later, but I think that we tried it, but we just don't know how to do it.
Right. So I think you're right in terms of always thinking about age differences. For the most part, our 18 to 22-year-olds are not at home. They're off at college. So we have had success in University of Kansas has been working with their Hillel has been working with the Fort Riley Jewish community, because that 18 to 22-year-old is much more comfortable with a Hillel community than they would be with a singles, which usually means late 20s, 30s. But the military has all those ages, like up to mid 30s, as pretty common through on a military installation. So as we start designing programming to meet the different ages, that's something we want to take into account. And working with that lay leader will help to, it's the lay leader who should establish the Facebook page, but work with you, so if you have those resources, is the lay leader who should be able to identify, who are the right people. It's a leader who can arrange transportation. That's absolutely a Jewish program. If it was together with the JCC of, Jewish singles programming, so like 25 to 35-year-olds, that lay leader can arrange a van to take them there.
Do we have any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Rabbi, for being here today. I loved hearing your story, and I wanted to invite everybody to join us here again, just like every Thursday at the same link and at the same time. We'll be having Muhammad Darshi from Givat Chaviva from Israel. He will be talking to us about shared society. So I hope to see everybody there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi.
Nice to see you, Rabbi.